Unemployment in itself has a bigger concept, whether it's skills that are not available or even just jobs not being available. Like you want to go to work, so they're not able to work. Of limitations in some parts of the corporate niche where, women are expected to just do the kitchen somewhat. You know what I'm saying? That's just central works with an expected work. Now, if culturally the woman is not educated, the period of education goes to a man, the woman is expected to focus on household chores. We are taking away their time to be able to go to work, right? So they're going to be constrained in that. If businesses have access to credit, they can invest in technologies, they can expand, they can hire more people, and then we'll have some, offset on unemployment. So who underemployment as it may be, right? So the credit constraint is a mixed bag, and what we need to overcome is a couple of what would I call them? Some of the things that we already say work, but have not been tested, or we are trying to disregard the evidence of how we know it works, and then just do it the way we want to do it. So the first study that I'm actually wanting to reference is thinking about better targeting. That if we does credit, like credit access, if I give credit to everybody someone I was talking to at lunchtime, they're focused on credit access, making sure that people have access. If you're attending that they have access to credit, they're going to be able to invest in businesses, and those businesses will eventually lead to higher employment. But the challenge is, at least from the research that we have done, credit outcomes are the success of that story is not consistent for everybody, right? Not everybody has the same in the pre-war day. So we need to think about who do we target with credit. And because of that problem, researchers were trying to understand that story in India. And what they did as they're expanding microfinance to these new areas, they tried to target two different types of people. People that already have businesses and all they did is, jumpstart to scale up. And then people that, just want credit, they have ideas in their head, but they're reluctant to start stage because they're saying they don't have credit access. And because of the way this study is organized, these people are similar in all different ways except for those two things, right? So then an intervention is put in place as you can credit access and then follow up what the outcomes of these people are. And what we are seeing from the results is that people that actually have already established businesses that are not waiting for credit access, because when credit is actually is expanded to those kind of people, growth is power, right? Their businesses are growing, their profit yields are higher, and eventually they expand their businesses at a speed of about 35% to 40%, right? So what does this story tell? The story tells us that not everybody has to, when we think about access to financial services or access to credit, not everybody benefits the same way, right? And we have to think about that as we are targeting our efforts to expand SMEs and different countries. The next study is best of work that was done in Bangladesh, where the story is more around, again, an overarching theme that best of conversations I've been having this morning and hearing people say is that sometimes financial institutions are unable to extend credit to folks because they're worried. There's no insurance factor for them to extend that, right? So because of that, they give you smaller amounts of credit, but those are not able to really jumpstart that business and cause it to start before, okay? Remember what Patrick was saying, we need to scale up, we need to do bold things. So how do we work around these challenges? So the key thing here was around making sure that the way contracts are structured. So when we structure, credit product and credit contract, our thinking is, you gotta pay at the end of the month every day. But people's income is not like that sometimes, right? Sometimes it's sporadic, sometimes it shows up, 30 months later. Sometimes it is, there's a windfall in a certain day. So how do we arrange, credit contracts to be able to account for those kind of things? And in this case, the solution the researchers are putting in place was a flexibility. So yes, we give you a credit product, but in case you're not able to pay on that particular day, instead of us penalizing you, we give you a lead board where you can pay, deferring payment to a later date. And what we're seeing because of that insurance ability, right? That there's the entrepreneur gets say, okay, if I around this old idea, I want to invest in it, but given the constraint that I currently have, I'm not able to pursue. But if you creating the terms, right, and giving an insurance of payment that things don't go right in the first instance, I have a grace period of another couple of months. What happens is that people are taking bolder moves, right? People are taking bolder moves and investing in businesses that were growing and employing even more people, okay? One of the biggest challenges with credit access relates to assets, collateral. We can think about this in terms of what it's willing to get, credit perfect. So we also have issues that relate to property rights and collateral. All this comes in the way of that. And apparently I have 3 minutes and I have 18 sites ago. So in this case, because of the collateral issue, what researchers did was to change how we are thinking about credit product, right? And under the need for collateral. And then the thought process was, okay, get the assets that you want to acquire that is going to be business generating. That asset becomes our insurance, right? That is our insurance. And then the funding goes towards that. And then people are able to get these big assets that, drive businesses, that drive board. And then what we're seeing based off that pyramid group that gets this money, small amounts of money that are capable, that, people that financial institutions are willing to give out, with the collateral constraints. What we're seeing is that for those that actually were able to acquire an asset and use that collateral, they are more good, right? So what does that mean? We're able to employ even more skills. So the key thing about skills, it's 2 ways. So there is the skills of the people that are looking for jobs. How do we want to make sure that we skill those people? But then the other issue is the people that are running businesses, especially small businesses, don't have the skills necessary to actually effectively run them. So what are the options available to us? Or what are we seeing is working in terms of either skilling or getting to think about moving people from that need for certain type of skills, special skills, to where we want them to go. Okay, for businesses particularly, what we are seeing is more around, yes, technical skills are great, and actually this relates to also like job seekers. The value of soft skills that help people transition through challenging times, plan better, right? And overcome some psychological barriers that come in the way of them being liberated. Actually, when combined with technical skills, they yield better results, right? So that mindset transformation has to be really thought about as we are designing interventions that help people grow their businesses. And business training skills, like I'll say, whether that is marketing, whether that is accounting, are great, right? But the entrepreneurs don't have time to show up in these classes, right? And when we compare it to them outsourcing for these services or being the consultant to fill in that gap, right? We see that when they have these consultants, people that are specialized, people that have the skills already, come do the job, they outcome a lot better than you trying to empower that person and move them from ground zero to to a higher level, right? It becomes a lot more difficult. So if you want to stop both for small businesses especially, we need to focus our attention on making sure that they have access to the right kind of talent to get things going. So in terms of like job seeking, I think the overarching story here is, yes, you can teach us how to write better series. Yes, you can teach us how to do certain things, empower us with technical skills, whether that is, through some sort of mentorship, whether that is through some sort of apprenticeship, but that is not it. If you want to move the needle, we need to make sure that these skills that we're building are going to be tagged to a particular job, right? So we are doing referrals, right? We are connecting people. So we don't just do a training for the training's sake, but we are showing, hey, these are the job opportunities that are available for you. Can we match this? I think for the the story again here, it is more about going beyond technical skills that match in both technical and soft skills to get people going. So the other thing that I can think about is, so we have talked about credit access and just thinking about how we structure how people can get credit, and then we have also talked about how to think about way beyond the typical job trainings and thinking about how businesses themselves can get better skills, to going towards now how they can expand markets and what market expansion really do for business. And the first story is making sure that we can expand our markets beyond the local market, right? And this is where our financial inclusion comes in, that it plays this role very, very well, right? I can have a conversation with someone in Lagos and get into something shit here. I pay the least complete and no frictions, we are good. But going beyond that to get into the export market. Someone was talking about the free trade areas, right? How can we set ourselves to make sure that businesses have access and think about the frictions that are needed, especially for small businesses getting into these businesses. What we see is that even giving them that opportunity to participate in an export market not only improves their quality of products, but also improves, their ability to understand how that business works, right? And then based off that, they're able to expand, right, and do better in the market. The other story, so maybe the other thing that I can talk about in business expansion is making sure that you leverage your technology for people to think about how we can crowdsource, for example, for inputs, right? So instead of me going to the market by myself, right, to get the source for input products, I jerry with other people that are seeking for inputs, like I saw, and then we have one solid order that gives us lower prices, right, and making sure that our businesses function more effectively. I know, for the most part, my story has been disrupted in technology on time, but I want you to take a couple of things from this conversation. One, when we think about unemployment, we want to think about unemployment in a way that it is not the same for everybody. Okay? There's certain groups of people that are more affected by it, which are urban folks, women and youth, and people with disabilities. And then we need to think about our interventions to make sure that they are addressing those things. And then when we think about credit, the key story is we need to make sure that we are targeting the right people with credit. We need to make sure that our contracts are set up in such a way that they understand the challenges of the people that we're trying to do. Whether that is in terms of how the repayment schedules are set, or whether that is in terms of thinking about how assets are how assets come in the way, what collateral comes in the way for people accessing credit. And then for skilling, we need to think more beyond just giving people technical skills. They are great. They're great study, and we see benefits of that. But their mindset of folks comes in the way of people then being able to overcome the challenges even though they have skills. Someone was saying about that, yes, someone with education can thrive at least at a basic level. But we don't just want people to thrive at a basic level because because that inhibits their ability to create more. Remember, our story is not just for one person be employed. Our story is to get the group employed. And if you get people that are skilled and powerful enough, we're able to have this big pushback. And then for markets and access and fraud, the key thing is to think about the friction. Whether that is the way the government sets up these quotas or government contracts. I think one of the studies that I wanted to show is that sometimes when businesses are not afforded the opportunity to get government product contracts, they can't grow. But when they do, when you compare the businesses that are very similar, with the exception of the fact that one gets a government contract, you see the one that gets a government contract does expand even much further, right? And then the final thing I would say is technology is here for us, right? And we can work with it, make sure that we offset some of the challenges of whether someone is a PWD, they can use technology right now to communicate effectively, do tasks that people, other people previously they couldn't do without the technology, right? So we can leverage the technology for networking purposes, but also to overcome some of the barriers that are coming in terms of skills gaps and things like that. So I will pause there and we can have a broader conversation.
We form up brand for the lovely presentation. Very informative and very detailed. So we're just going to go quickly to our panel discussion, which is going to be led by Chinapa calling Obo. I'm going to hand over the mic now for her to introduce the dog and her other finalists. Around us also happy. Thank you.
So as in level one, as I've introduced, my name is Natakovi Ego and I lead advocacy and at a common called Enacting Parent and Children and Advancement. Open head and you check it then I can as public demand for all because the poor advocacy platform. And on this panel, I have with the Yasmin Kanar Asage, who's the country manager at Manufacturing Africa at EDU, and Brian with your representative to Million Production. I have a very good photo, but I had to go to the panel session in 20 minutes, and it difficult because there's a lot to unpack. There's so much to talk about, but we're being trying to do and as much as we can to just take it. I won't get to work. From my client, shared from their experience with the work that we do, practical insights on how we can be done for infection, as I like to say, because it's beyond designing drugs for the people with it's pointed the action translate to actual outcomes. For community, open this conversation with something that's very precious to me at personal thing. A second from my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter. She's thinking I didn't say this. Because she was reflecting one day and she said, picture Nigeria as a person that needs leg to stand on. Now, because of our problem, Nigeria has no that can't stand up full and full, but instead had people outside carrying it on their shoulders. What he needs to do as Nigerian is to take back what Ibar help Nigeria back on her feet. And that's because, well, it's stuck a quite very because clearly if you just look at the picture at all, the resources that we had and the gap that exists in Nigeria. For this conversation, I'll start with Yasmin. My factory article basically is playing, should I say, a captain's role in terms of bringing funding through FDI to the manufacturing sector to bring jobs. And I read on your website, your goal was to create 90,000 jobs, and he surpassed that by doing 100,000. Fantastic. But I also remind you of a comment that Patrick made earlier when your Jamie speak about not solving for a fraction of the population, but solving for all people that need it. So, on the one hand, impressive that you surpassed the target. On the other hand, it very much scale. And maybe it's, as my daughter says, it's the Nigerians to solve for themselves. Second thing is, in terms of those jobs that had been created, have they targeted the right people, the people who need them, or is this serving the people who are already employed?
Thank you. The best will thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to what I think is the most important question for the day. So, as my moderator, Chinasa explained, I work on a program called Manufacturing Africa, which facilitates the inflow of foreign direct investment into target markets across Africa. Yes, have the initial goal of actually place the 9,000 jobs for the private market and bringing in $1 billion worth of foreign direct investment. Or we've actually already paid the target. Our target now is $1.9 billion worth of foreign direct investment and 150,000 jobs. Because I think, as Patrick said, just meeting your target is not enough. Manufacturing after murder, not our objective, but unimportant still what Brian has explained in the presentation. So the fucking question of whether they did the right thing to build that they created. So our love frame is based on an index model that assumes that foreign direct investment comes into the target markets that we operate in. That foreign direct investment is facilitated through to manufacturing companies. Those manufacturing companies can expand, and by expanding, they create jobs. What we do is we then measure the work, the proportion of breakup that created for women, the proportion of this breakup for youth, and the proportion of breakup for marginalized. And we have KPIs that track that. Because manufacturing in and of itself will traditionally attract men, right? Men will be attracted to the manufacturing sector. I mean, we'll likely find the marginalized, the use some of the women in duty, in maybe customer services, but hardly ever on the production line. And we then implement interventions that help the companies that we work with to think about how they can put in those policies that would best allow these groups to enter into the workforce. So I'll give you an example, and it shocked me when I first worked with my Shells Industrial Park, Lado in Lagos. The fact that there's poor lighting when it comes onto the zone in the industrial park means that the average woman would not be able to work in that park because they'd be worried about sexual harassment. They'd be worried about how they'd be able to get home from work on a late evenings. So we implement very, very practical policies and frameworks that allow the company that we work with to actually allow more women, more youth, and more marginalized to enter into the workforce. That being said, I think one of the criticisms that we have of lots of programs that my manufacturing, I suppose, is that we fail to merge job creation and financial inclusion in a very formalized way, right? So the law frame that I'd say to you that the FBI jobs, it stops them. What we don't then do is think about the jobs that are being created, the workers, are they then being able to access financial creditors in a way that will bring them into the formal financial system and bring them to a level that brings in a busted system. I think there is something to be said around traditional development programs such as mine, being able to take on board KPIs that are linked to financial inclusion that will ensure that we're not just bracing package of growth. So we supported one industrial park, we supported one pharmaceutical company, but we're having spillover effects into the broader economy, and we're actually bringing a larger proportion of the upper pocket. So we had a lot of recent examples of when manufacturing has been very affected across the African continents. Looking most notably to Ethiopia, which is actually where the formulation of manufacturing Africa came from, looking at what the power of deliberate infrastructure in the zone was able to do for the textile industry and transform the textile industry in Ethiopia. We can see that where there is a deliberate focus on one sector and infrastructure that can facilitate that sector, you'll see FBI interns coming in, and then you see that Brian, the economy for Kuduga North, where you can see in Morocco, they focus on automation development policy and also how we can support local development of SME that can support the automotive sector. And then in Rwanda, which I have been mentioned, throughout today, and there's been a real focus on driving, digital transformation to the point where Rwanda is now seen as one of the easiest places in Africa to do business. And so we're seeing where the ease of doing business metrics actually make a difference when it comes to how attractive investors see a market for making their investment. What I would say that Nigeria needs to learn from the example is that Nigeria needs a combination of hard infrastructure, whether that industrial part, power, transportation, but also stock enabling, store development, SME linkages, developing our local network, making sure that there's financial inclusion. I think it has to be a combination of hard infrastructure and soft enablers if we're actually going to see the impact that some of the other markets have seen.
Thanks very much. And like to just basically reiterate what we just centered by these opponent fitness and the great things that are take a breath on host so I actually repeat on this creation for boost but for us an athletic person why that thing is and they get people talk about I don't have money I can't even see back right I had you and we had a job or we had a sort of livelihood and so we pay that in the core time that you use it naturally you want that itself but in also what's sort of dread yet as a just creation it's a sort of like so we the case that you be exposed to a particular market would talk about formalizing the reports that contribute and a lot of financial how can we formalize the form of delivery that governments further its Cuban because sometimes we don't take or formalizing it actually doesn't resonate for the end people.
Yeah, that's a very big question. So the issue on formalization has to be to understand what are the constraints that these folks get it. Whether that is identity, whether that is money, whether that is financial funds, whether that is, women, right? How the challenges with getting an ID card to open a financial account, that is debt points in terms of be able to move from there on to going to, financial service place because you need to see at a place uncapped in the hands or whatever needs to be done. So if we are designing products that don't offset those parameters, then they're not going to have the key outcome that I actually put the meeting. So what are some of the things that I think I've seen working in my work? It is thinking about how people think and behavioral challenges and things like that. And it is, for example, a savings product, you layering like reminders for savings, giving them targets and goals. So you're working how the person's psychology works to then develop a product that addresses those kind of issues. Then about things like literacy, right? The people that need to have these products are people sometimes that are not literate. Right? They're not literate in terms of reading and writing, but also digital literate. Right? So you design your digital app, it looks wonderful, it's so cute, but it's not thinking about, my mother or your mother in the village who doesn't know how to write, who doesn't know how to work with passwords, all these verification processes. And I love consumer protection and spend a lot of my time putting on consumer protection. That all these verification processes that are being put in place are coming in the way of, of doing these things. And then the way we are thinking about is everything that we are dealing with financially works the same way for everyone. It doesn't work the same way. So first, when I say that it doesn't work the same way for everybody, I want you to not think that I'm saying women it works differently and men it works differently. Certain young people it works differently. What I want to actually make you think about as well is the fact that even among women, they're not the same. Even among young people, all of us here, if I had started, segmenting as appropriately, you'll see there are bigger differences and constraints that blanket policies, blanket interventions can't work, right? So if we want to offset those kind of issues, then we have to think about, I know we want to come forward, but what is going on with Taiwan and how do we want to make sure that even though we want an idea that works, what about the people that are finding it the challenge to be able to access that? The last thing that I want to speak about is buying, right? If we are not able to demonstrate, and Chinasa, this is you and I's problem, if they're not able to demonstrate the value of someone having yes, you built me an account, so you know what I'm saying? I have an account, but then what? It is not giving me privileges to accessing credit data because they're using the same credit portfolio, for everybody, right? It is not making my payment system between me and my customer work effectively because why? The cost that we're working there are blanket costs, right? They're not thinking about me, the village, and my challenges, right? When we're thinking about savings products or insurance products that could cushion us in the moments of shocks and things like that, what we want is a guy who carries with a lot of money and can deposit it without a cap. But the people that are using poker systems are folks that have small money, right? Like it's 1 naira, 10 naira, 20 naira, but you don't want the logistics or the challenges there in managing that usually costs of managing small money, right? So all your financial officers in the banking industry are looking for the damn bottom time, or at least the people in this room. So there, all the efforts, all the marketing, all these stories that we're saying are focused on those things. And then I think the final thing that I would say, unless you're final, we say, the personal fighter. We look people into the financial system and financial inclusion that I cannot underestimate the honest of thinking about consumer protection, right? Because again, these are people that are non-digitally literate. These are people that are, targets for sponsors, right? All these issues where things go wrong, where do I need to go? You all need me to come to the factory, roll a complaint. You have to come, your production failed. No, you need to bring that person to the factory. You know what I'm saying? I know each one of us has experienced a challenge. Now, what does that mean in practice for an informal business that, what's up the margins? It means that business person has to leave their day-to-day, their source of living, to come and chase up the 10 nap, to come and chase up the 1,000 nap. You know what happened? The husband thinks about, everything else they can spend their hand do, because for them it's a matter of sometimes life and death, right? And they say, what? I am happy keeping my mind in my problem, right? They run all these efforts that we're putting in place, all these energies that, keep Chinasa and many other people in the financial inclusion space away, will go down because the fundamental issue is trust. This isn't fail. We need to make sure that there is a recourse mechanism that is prevents issues from showing up, so preventative mechanisms for things like fraud, making sure that transparency that enhances visibility of how to charge this so people know that room among it. We have done studies where we have measured what the actual rate of overcharge in the market is versus the consumer's perception of what to are charged, and you see that lots of consumers are thinking they may charge more, right? So there is a gap, and part of that gap is a responsibility on us as financial service providers, which is transparency. So if there's a culture of lack of transparency, there's a culture of people thinking you're working under the table, and to be honest, I've had conversations with financial institutions, and they say that they work under the table sometimes because the central bank has put caps on services, and they need to survive. They have stakeholders to answer to. They have to keep people involved, right? So because of that, they have to find ways to make money. But that perception doesn't just stop in the boardrooms of these financial institutions. It actually extends to the general population, and they affect that when they experience certain things. And we need to offset that because that will undermine the usage of these services and the benefits there. Financial inclusion, we wanted you to talk about a bit of the benefits of financial inclusion, but I think this is a combated view, and I can go on and on.
I think more practically, there's a need for us to know other issues even more than we do now. And I think there's questions that we need to ask regarding their access to financial services that will allow us to go to that deeper level when it comes to emerging market, the need in the past and poverty alleviation. And I would also maybe push it back to Brian in terms of job creation and thinking about skill development as well. A lot of the pain points for some of our prime beneficiaries of some manufacturers is around the fact that the skill space, that there's such a gap in thinking about what manufacturing you need now and the future. We were thinking about machine learning, AI, and what can we better do to make sure that skill gap is filled. I know one of the questions that everybody discussed was that AI piece, right? So I think there's something to be said about using AI to applying the data between the two of us and thinking about what solutions could be created. I think what we don't have now is the benefits. So we're, for example, a 7-year program. We're now in our country. Develop a program to come up, the 7-year program. Sometimes they send the bus 12 to 18 months to speak it out, which I do chain on to whisper that fish from the target. We really don't have that time anymore. So I think when Terry being able to mine data will help us to come up with match distribution in quick and simple way, and that will get cost polarization for plants like this. I think one of the main challenges Kevin would here are the too many silos or different persons operating and not
collaboration between partners like ourselves is just one way to think about how we can put this work forward, but also collaboration with, the people that have the bigger power to get things work, which is the regulator governing. Right? We have learned this lesson so quickly that it's one thing to generate evidence, make sure it's there. We have done it for over 20 years, generating amazing evidence, right, of what works and what doesn't work in dealing with this, and sharing that, because you can generate it, it's a show somewhere, but also make sure that you're strategically having conversations so that you can inform the conversation like we're currently having, but also move beyond just sharing the evidence and generating it, to really starting to think about how can we work with the implementers to actually translate the evidence into action. We assume, everybody has been talking about evidence. The assumption is that if I read a paper, I'll be able to understand how to do something, right? Like suddenly I'll know my problems about, unemployment or just unlocking growth will be solved by reading one paper, or in a multiple paper, that I can interpret the evidence very well and I'll know the constraints, I know the assumptions thereof. Unfortunately, it's not the case. And for our case, what we have done is to develop what we call embedded labs, where we embed our technical skills within programmatic partners, but in most cases with government partners, to help them interpret the evidence and work with the evidence to actually lead to better outcomes. But beyond that, even as we are programming, and the many spaces of uncertainty, missing middle, how this needs to sample. So developing a learning agenda, developing learning questions that unlock your mind into thinking, why is this working, right? Because most of it's programmatic activity. What are they tracking? We did it, it happened. How many people showed up? 20 people. You don't know how they learned, whether what we're trying to develop actually was addressed. So all the evidence people are talking about, even medical is when his brother.
We had just a few more minutes to have you all share your contribution question. So we're essentially moving or transitioning into the workshop session. And all of this has to end in 14 minutes. So I'm happy to get your contribution, questions or comments around it into podcast.
It's not about the issue of evidence. Like you say, everything is there or there. And I think it's about the issue of sent to quality. Because at least at the end of the day, even for what people work for, what is the value addition? So it's not as it is an IPT thing like that. What it needs of. I think the private sector, the non-state actors also take that. Civil bet work of it, after some progress like that. Then the second one, under the political economy, is the issue of AMAT. Because to be able to really make a lot of difference, when you have a company that really talk about 3 billion jobs, 1 million type of thing, again you start wondering that where the 3 billion are we talking? So definitely sometimes they really come and train no skills and done. If it is to train people, everybody in the university are being trained and all that. And under the political economy too, I take the issue of where research, impact evaluation, that's most of these examples are not Nigerian. They are coming from outside. So if you look at it, because of the Nigerian specificity going in about some of very good examples, Bangladesh about, but the high time we start taking about Nigeria localized research to solve our own problem and to see how our own research institutes, universities are commissioned to be able to try to solve the problems and all these type of problems. Then lastly, skills work. I think, like, for example, we in education, we have basic education for, we have tertiary education for. What is the skill for? In the initial concept, it was ITS that's supposed to be the skills work. Because at the end of the day, the private sector just need government to be able to support them. But where is the fund coming from? So I think we just have to think about being a dedicated skill, be able to leverage the.
That's a woman accept for the
أنا ماني مدير وقتكم. أنا تعرف برانك ده world where ethnic groups and civil government to work together in case of young people say if they want to experience leadership, they work on the young people with the work. SME do have the money to pay for still time. And then that girl, can we put both of them to train young people with skills that this SME need to go at business? Should they work experience on there, they get jobs, are good businesses will be able to get together, or because also the plan to better jobs, to better move up on because they have good experience. They have some kids I made to try in businesses and these SME kids and skill talent for lookups.
Ugali lake is the one that question na. Robert Siren. Yak of the lake. What's it?
By the way, how not try. I work at Mida. But what I need to make a pipe in the yeah, actually, it's a base Windows paper. Yeah, that's it. I work at Mida. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on if I can make a small and big them and to buy the make the disturbance.
I want to speak to the issue of connecting to Latam. Let me tell you what I did tonight. I don't take any bottled water that is produced by a multinational company. And I'm picking its squeaks. Okay, SNE. We require very low technology to produce our bottle. A bottle of that from low handling goods from multinational companies and lack of the price. To the extent that SD bottling company, every part of the company, it uses water. We have a particular bottle company like the other. I paid product from their share. But what I hear, to see the son of 48% of their turnover of the market. What it means that we need to have a deliberate process. A deliberate government process. Not to outlaw more special accommodation. What the necessary in that sector to make up, not have to pass the don't you add adibity? One most national public. Allah said, far outweigh it. But the same can be even so proud before. Wow. What this and oh, we would make strengthen the heads and such. So that I can space and burden. Well, this is my solution. Very right. Do not abnormal nothing at top of what that called. But not do the way take more from nothing at top in producing low hand move product. Without taking things that it's a water thing.
The presentation that Brian made really Jamaican because I did be and over the last 8 years that we've been working in this state. So we're a band set up by government and some multinational multilateral agents strictly for small businesses. And what we find and why I said that Brian's presentation resonated with that in terms of number, so over almost 1 million SMEs that is reached over the year. A large number are women. But if you look at the problem, well, I can share the statistics. I think 7% in terms of number are women. But in terms of the amount that has gone to them, only about 26%. So a huge gap in terms of the quality in that case, which is why I didn't want a match for us. But I like to, and the youth as well, you know, we find that the youth, in terms of volume, I think we're like about 18% of everything that we've done going to the people the age of 18 to 35. So what can we do about youth in particular, especially looking at the Nigeria demographic? There are a lot of initiatives out there. The Entrepreneurship Bank, one of our shareholders, the African Development Bank, or youth really need more patient capital, so more equity, because we find them in that startup seat. We find them in fintech, digital, creative, technology, and form. So in terms of my question is actually for the moderator from Epinan.
follow the financial inclusion study that you do every day. I haven't seen it recently, so I don't know if we improve in terms of financial inclusion. So what would be the effect of the fintech, so money pay or pay? We see that strongly now in terms of more businesses having payment systems. So how has that reflected in the work you do, and what can you do for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Shidu Bijamagabajiro. And the law of everything about an authorship, a very, very strategic lesson that's pick up to cater to small businesses and also large businesses at work. I'm also the founder of Like Leadership Organization and the assistant youth coordinator for Knowledge International Foundation. Now, the reason why I picked out those things is because I'm hoping to go back home from people here with practical solutions. So my question is to Yazin in charge of manufacturing Akupa. How possible is it if an organization is able to do the background work, come up with all the data and evidence that is required? How possible is it that they can reach out to manufacturer architect for direct foreign investment in order to, set up something in a local community? I know that we are looking to go for the big pitches, the government and everything, but is it possible that an organization can actually stand up, set up a system, even if it is within one local community, and start doing the little that they can in that direction?
Okay, I think you can then make it's working. I have to head to the airport, so I'll be okay. And so I understand what you're saying with the local community comes together for our investment solution and parts and from direct investment. You have to look at it from the early day investor. So you will see that part of this transaction. And so whilst we are able to support mediums and large scale enterprises, what we would hope is that supporting a medium and large scale scales into SME in the community like you mentioned. So manufacturing Africa has been around for 6 years and on its competition by companies. It means we have limited resources. So what we're trying to support is essentially the fishes that he mentioned, not the government-led ones. Actually, we was predominantly the private sector. But what we're trying to do is demonstrate that there is viable investment opportunities in Nigeria. And by demonstrating that, you could also garner some local funding and local investment in policy investing into that. I'll give you an example. We supported a solar boat system producer that local banks had just rejected. They've now gone into like $18 million and now Surrey Bank are interested in their next round. So our role is more of a multiplier effect where we support the ones that take and most successful and demonstrate the ecosystem that they provide the opportunity there. And then he also helps to build the local supply linkages where the community that you mentioned would be begin.
So quick pull up. Can you put us to the ones that support small?
Of course, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Yakan, for that. You've asked me quite a question.
Anyway, as you all are thinking about running away, there are multiple things that you guys have put across, and we could try to find a way to merge them all together. I think, the tip man here talked about the need of localized research. I am an advocate. Like, all these ideas we are talking about, we should not just spot anything like that. A little stressing out, right? And then before we scale, right? First before we scale. And the other thing that I kind of want to say on that front is, projects don't work because you have good intention, okay? You could have the best intention. You could have, the best thing that it would work. You could even take it to your pastor. Praise you. But that is on how projects work. At least based off experience, I think that we see that work. Projects work because of evidence, right? Of us really thinking critically and channeling them towards success. So make sure that we are testing things and then make sure that whatever we're doing is anchored with evidence. You talked about, water and the circulation of the market, the international. I come from the country where, we chased away Indians because they were taking out all the business, all the things. So there's a famous president you probably are familiar with, decided to take them away. Is that the best approach? No, I think you agree that the strategy of saying multinational retail employing a significant amount of people. Remember, SMEs are great, but the quality of jobs they're offering are not the kind of jobs we just want people to have. We want them to transition beyond just having a job. Remember the underemployment issue, to actually having quality jobs. And these multinationals actually try to break the gap. Where sometimes they can shortchange our people, so we can try to work out a problem. I think my broad view is a bit more or in a slightly different direction. The market is not saturated, and if we think it is, then we need to expand it beyond the boundaries of this country and start thinking a little bit more strategically about the continent of Africa. We can choose to be like Latin America, or we can choose to be like the United States of America, right? Where now the market is just not Nigeria, the market is bigger than Nigeria. So then expanding and providing his opportunities for SMEs in particular, be able to participate in that exporting market, and hence lead to some level. So you talked about skilled and talent development and people. Your student, they run away. Jafari is a common thing in this country. Several friends I had in the first couple of months when I came to Nigeria left. It seems like the culture is better out of this country. But the thing is, people are looking for better opportunities, and we're not going to stop them, whether it is within the country or outside the country for work. Right? If I see a better job that, had better outcome to myself, I'm likely going to move. Even you yourself, you're likely going to do. So that is more likely to happen than no, right? But we need to, think about the reasons why people are moving, or at least when we're thinking about, interventions about skilling. For me, it is great that they're getting a job, and if they're getting a better job somewhere, they can do that, because that opens space for another person to get that job and be able to get skills and move on. And then there is a channel that is skilling and then transition. Of course, attrition always has challenges, right? But what we need to always do is to kind of offset why the people. Youth skilling was someone who asked about the hit. Someone is that info? Yeah, we come back to all the other solutions. I'm happy to discuss all the solutions and the potential. But for every new idea that we're thinking about, I want to test it. Because I can tell you one way or another it will work, it may not work, but we don't know. That's for sure.